When it was constructed, it was never labeled as a fort, it was never given a name. The Spanish built it in 1742, and the earliest documentation we have just calls it the tower. And when you put it on maps, it's known as the Tower of Matanzas. This body of water here is named Matanzas River, and to go a little further there, that's not even a river. If any of you are familiar with geology or geography, if I can get my words. This is called a tidal estuary. It's opened on both ends of this island. Here we're at the south end. The city of St. Augustine with a much larger fort sits at the north end. It's a job of this little watchtower to guard the back door to St. Augustine, the Matanzas Inlet. And over the years, the Tower of Matanzas was labeled as the Fort of Matanzas because it looks like the other fort downtown and a few small characteristics. Both buildings were once painted red and white. Both have a century towers like this one over here in the corner. So yeah, why not call it a fort too? But as the years passed from there, you leave out the word of when you're talking about it, and the phrase Fort Matanzas has just kind of stuck with it ever since. The building was usually housed with no more than about 7 soldiers at a time. They would stay out here on a 30-day rotational basis and watch the Matanzas Inlet. Over 80 years of service, this building was never shot at, no soldier has ever died here, and the records tell us every time an enemy ship was spotted, this building would fire a warning shot to persuade the boat to leave. Every warning shot we know of says the boat turned around and left without shooting it back. So here's your police car on the side of the road of the 18th century. Right here on the lower levels, the regular soldiers' quarters. Soldiers such as Richard and Alan here would have shared the lower level together. Their commanding officer would have had the upstairs room. The only difference between their uniforms compared to the commanding officer's uniform is on the red cuffs on their coat would have a series of yellow stripes signifying the rank. We have one of those coats on display up on the second floor. And then in the second floor room is a vertical ladder that takes you up to the observation platform. All of you are welcome to explore every level of the building as you look around today. The guidelines during the tours are just to not sit or stand on the walls due to the fragile coquina nature here, the shellstone that breaks away. And just please don't climb on the guns while you look around. I know how enticing that is for pictures. We just ask you to please not climb on them. Up on the officer's room, that vertical ladder, we ask you on your way down to not jump off. Lately, every time someone jumps off and lands on the floor, we lose plaster off the ceiling below. And then we're going to shoot a gun for you right now. What Alan's carrying is a flintlock musket of the 18th century. Would you guys like to take over that conversation?
Sure. What we're going to do is show you how militiamen and Spanish soldiers were trained back in the middle of the 18th century. We'll be using the actual drill that was used here in St. Augustine. Now we're going to fire 2 shots, if that's okay with you. Okay, the first shot will be by the drill. The second shot is actually going to be by the battlefield load, how you would load and fire the musket on the battlefield itself. Now what you saw him doing just now is running a safety check on the gun to make sure that the gun is empty and ready to use. You use your ramrod, ping it, that tells you there's nothing down the barrel of the gun. And then the safety on this gun is the half-cocked position. So Alan will demonstrate it. You can actually hold the gun by the trigger while it's in half-cock and it should not go off. Of course, if it does go off, you want to retire that gun. You do not want to proceed with loading it. Now, there are many expressions from the English language that come from this particular weapon. Going off half-cock. Now you know where it comes from. The other thing is that if you took your gun to the gunsmith when you got it back, you wanted to make sure you had lock, stock, and barrel. So as I said, there are a number of expressions that come from the gun. Now, of course, when the soldiers were going out to battle, they would have the bayonet fixed already on the gun. You'll notice that this is going to tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Triangular bayonet, right? These are now illegal because they make a very difficult hole for a doctor to sew up. The bayonet nowadays are all like a knife, they're straight. This thing was not healthy, but then the idea. Also, your reload is about 3 shots a minute, right? At some point in time, the enemy's going to be too close for you to reload. So this basically becomes a spear fight. The predecessor to this was what's called a plug bayonet, which you actually had to take. It was a knife with a tapered down handle. You actually had to stick it into the barrel at the last minute. Of course, you can't fire the weapon like that. Well, as you can see in this case, I could actually fire the weapon with the bayonet on there because it goes around, and it's also locked on so it wouldn't come off. Where the old plug bayonets, they'd fall out, you'd stick them in something, they'd stay. So this was actually a very good modification. This is actually the system that's used up through the Civil War until they finally come out with cartridge guns. Although the lock changes from a flintlock, which is what this is, which uses a piece of stone to strike a piece of metal, creating sparks to fall into the pan to set it off, to the cap lock, which basically uses something that looks like a primer on a modded rifle cartridge that went over a little nipple. This is actually called the cock on one of these because it looks like a rooster head. The hammer actually comes about when we get the cap lock and it starts looking like a hammer.
Okay, you ready? Pick it out of we just asked that throughout the drill you just remain seated.
We'll say cover your ears if you want to right before we pull the trigger. Did you tell them about the paper?
The other thing, this is what gives us the 3 shots a minute. It's a paper cartridge. Now this is a blank, but in the old days this would have had a bullet in one end of it and about 60 grains of powder behind it. We use more powder because what we don't have is the compression that the bullet gives you. So if we fire it with 60 grains of cap powder, it sounds like a real wimpy kind of thing. The extra powder gives us the bang. Okay. Now what I'm doing is I'm pulling the tails out on these guys. It makes it easier for me to grab. This is called a cartridge box. It's a 21 round cartridge box. If I was going into combat with this thing, I'd be completely loaded up with this.
It's going to plug up his ears. I will tell you when it's time.
También.
It's just one musket, but it will be.
Yeah, it's not the kind of bang you get from like a modern rifle. It's more of a boom, but they're quite loud.
Okay. Soldato, atención. Armas al hombro. La mano derecha al arma. Retiren las armas. Aliabi del Theodore. Lippen la pietra. Sopen la cazoleta. Sacan el cartucho. Organ el cartucho. Saben. Cierren la cazoleta. Hacen las armas a la izquierda. Meten el cartucho en el cañón. Sacan la piqueta. Alta la piqueta. Corten la piqueta. Meten la piqueta en el cañón. Atacan. Retiren la piqueta. Alta la piqueta. Corten la piqueta. Meten la piqueta a su lugar. Armas al hombro. Mano derecha al arma. Altas las armas. Presenten las armas. You might want to cover your ears now. Preparen las armas. Apunten. Disparen. Retiren las
Good.
That happened about 20% of the time. What we didn't do is we didn't ram the paper down. So it's quite possible that the charge didn't get all the way down.
You want to empty it out?
You can try to shoot that off.
Oh, empty it out. What you just saw is the type of misfire known as a flash.
Before you reprime them. Yeah, what Richard was about to mention to you, the type of misfire that just happened was called the flash in the pan. Also known as all show and no go. Took a wire pick to pick out the vent hole because there could have been some blockage in there. That's the first time this gun has been fired for a while, so there may have been some like gun cleaning lubricant that was blocking the hole, something like that. That is common to happen on the first shot, but we're going to try to get it to go off now.
Preparing. Apunten. Disparen. Now that was the thing. On the battlefield, you don't want to go through all of those. It went off, Alan. I understand. He's being a very good soldier. He didn't wait until the command. All right, on the battlefield, you don't want to go through all those steps. On the battlefield, there's one command that I would give for loading, and that would be target. And so each soldier would try to load the gun as quickly as they could, because your rate of fire on the battlefield is being determined by the slowest guy in your line. So, because you can't begin the firing sequence until everybody's in shoulder arms. So, if you were a soldier, you did not want to be the last person in your line. So you would practice over and over. Try to make sure this time the powder is at the bottom of the barrel. So once everybody's at shoulder arms, you can then proceed with the firing. Mala derecha, no. Mano derecha, retire en las armas. Prepare in las armas. Cover your ears again. Apunten. Disparen. Retire en las armas.
Ese sonó fuerte.
Mano derecha armas. Descansen sobre las armas. Regálense. ¡Viva España!
That concludes our presentations for your tour. Now it's your time to look around and explore the fort. Most people tell us after they look around this place that they would go crazy out here. Military veterans always tell us they've been stationed in worse places. So I'll leave it up to all of you to decide whether or not you would like to be stationed out here or not. Remember, the building is 270 years old. It doesn't look exactly as it did for the soldiers back then. And at the very latest, please be on the boat ready to return to the other side at 1/4 after the hour. So look around and enjoy.